and welcome to the strategic analysis video for the management case study for November 2016. We're looking at Portafone, the mobile phone company. I'm Richard, I'm a writer and a business analyst here at Astranti, and I'm going to be taking you through this pack. Okay, let's get into it. Let's go whiz past this first page and get on to the rational model. This is the model that I'm going to be using to dig into Portafone and analyse their strategy. And the rational model is all about getting from now all the way to the future. That's what we're doing, and we start by analysing now, applying a generic strategy using ANSOS matrix to determine strategic options and choices, and we look at our method of growth, and that is how we achieve our future mission and objectives. And of course we need to take into account governance and ethics, and we need to consider our stakeholders, which we do via stakeholder mapping. Alright, that's what we're doing. Let's push on and have a look at how it's done. Alright, so the first stage of analysis is to basically we need to know where we're headed if we want to get there correctly. Okay, so the first step is to determine our mission and objectives. Okay, so we need to know who are the stakeholders in our business and how are we going to meet their needs in order to be successful, and we do this via stakeholder mapping. Okay, now you'll remember that the key to a good mission statement is set out by Campbell, and you need to define your purpose. You've got to say why do we exist, and who do we exist for, and what do we hope to achieve in the long term. Okay, how are we going to compete with other businesses in order to get there? All right, and then we've got to understand what the organisation stands for. Do we stand for value for money? Are we the cheapest? Are we going to stand for quality? Are we going to stand for innovation? Let's look at Apple and Samsung in the mobile phone market. Apple clearly stands for innovation. It stands for quality in its engineering and materials that it uses. It does not stand for value for money. It's decided that that's not on its list of values. Okay, it's a high-end premium product, the iPhone, isn't it? It's the most expensive one really that you can get. And what Apple have said is that's because we've made a choice to stand for quality and innovation, at least at the beginning, and that's where our values lie. We're not for everyone, we've chosen. All right, and then you've got to look within the company. What are the policies that people are expected to follow that will make the company actually get there, because people will start to act according to those values. So for example, in Apple, when the engineer comes to the innovation meeting and said, well, I've managed to source this incredibly cheap bit of aluminium that we can put the casing in, well, that's not acting according to the defined values, is it? All right, so that's how you set out your mission statement. Once you've got your mission statement, we're into the business of objectives, because you need to be able to provide a target so people know what they're aiming for, and then you need to be able to measure whether they hit their targets. So what I've said here is that the objectives provide focused targets to move towards more efficient planning, motivation of staff, and they enable accurate performance measurement. And the big worry for us here with Portafone is that we're not given any specific targets in the case study. We don't know really what they're aiming for, and we don't know what their staff have been told about the company and what they're supposed to be doing. Now on exam day, it might be that the unseen materials show you the specific targets, but if they don't, then you'll know this is a weakness in the company's planning approach. Okay, so when it comes to performance measurement, because we've got very little evidence in the pre-seen of any robust non-financial performance measurement, then the balance scorecard could actually work quite well as a way of measuring performance at Portafone. Okay, so don't be afraid to suggest that if it's not evident in the unseen. Now, governance is the way that organisations are directed, and the idea is to ensure that it's run in a way that's actually right for all stakeholders, but in particular the shareholders. And governance is actually subject to a code. There's a UK code of corporate governance, for example, here in the UK, and that includes you want a separate chairman and CEO. Okay, so you don't want your CEO and chairman to be the same person because you've got no oversight there. You should have independent non-executive directors. You should have audit, nomination and remuneration committees. Often those will be staffed by the NEDs, and straight away there we can see a little bit of a red flag flying, because we know there's absolutely no mention in the pre-seen of any board, non-executive directors, committees or a chairman. And well, look, it's a listed company, it's quoted on the Farland Stock Exchange, so it seems unconceivable really that there isn't a board and there aren't non-executives and there aren't committees. It may well be that this information is given to you in the unseen, but if it's not, or if there isn't, just be looking out for some issue in the exam where we don't have the correct governance in place. Okay, it's possible. Governance also has a risk management focus. It's involved with the disclosures of directors and their pay. Directors can pay themselves money, and that's why you want the remuneration committee overseeing that, because you don't want your CEO paying him or herself large amounts of money at the expense of investment in the company or at the expense of shareholder dividends, for example. Governance also covers financial reporting and control, so you'd have an audit committee typically that would be watching over the way that financial reporting is done, the way that reports are prepared, and it also includes information for directors to facilitate good decision making. Normally you want all directors involved in decision making, so typically you'd have a management committee as well, and there'd be regular meetings with your institutional shareholders, so your pension funds and hedge funds and so forth that have invested in your company, and that's likely to be the case with Portafone. Remember, it's a large listed company. You'd need to be meeting with those regularly because they're important stakeholders, and you'd want to see good use of the annual general meeting so that shareholders are actually kept informed and they're actually able to take part in the decision-making process. Now, we don't see any mention of this in the pre-seen, so these are all areas that you'd expect to see information given to you in the unseen, and if there's something missing, then that's your red flag. All right? So let's apply this, what we've just learned, to the case study. We've said there's no mention of non-executive directors, and so that's not necessarily good practice under the code, although we may find out in the exam that there are, but if they're not there, then obviously that's something to watch out for. Again, we've said there's no mention of remuneration committee, audit or nomination committees, and to be honest, there's very little evidence of any other governance issues. Okay, now, as I've said on the previous slide, it's a listed company, they're publicly quoted, so they absolutely should be conforming to governance requirements, and I expect they do, but you've got to check for weaknesses. All right, so it might be something around disclosures of directors and pay, it could be something around financial reporting, it could be something around these areas. Okay, look out for it, could be coming up. All right, now the next thing we need to look at are the stakeholders, and we do this via corporate social responsibility. All right, now Portafone makes mobile phones, all right, and mobile phones are technological products made of hard materials. They contain heavy metals like lithium, and they also contain precious metals like gold and silver, and they contain plastics and glass and other things that need to be disposed of in a responsible way. We have the issue in the world where these consumables that are being made out of these heavy metals and non-biodegradable materials and so forth are piling up in places where the Western world exports them to. So you've got huge dumping grounds in Africa and Asia that are causing problems to the environment and to health there. Okay, so look out for environmental issues to come up. No real mention of it in the pre-seen, but we'd be looking for something around reduced energy consumption. There should be energy audits at the company. We'd certainly be looking to reduce pollution and technotrash, and we might be looking at sourcing more recycled or renewable materials. Okay, and we want to make sure that our products at Portafone are recyclable. So think about, is there a reverse logistics operation in play when consumers are done with their handsets? You know, we live in a culture where people are encouraged to trade up handsets every 12 months or at least every 24 months when their contract expires. What happens to them then? Who takes them on? I know that I've got a drawer in my house full of old mobile phones which I keep precisely because I'm not quite sure where to put them. So what happens to these phones? Where do they go? Is there a scheme in play? Could Portafone offer a reverse logistics scheme so that the networks are taking these phones back from consumers and sending them back to Portafone and allowing Portafone to recycle them? And how would that play into their stakeholders and their needs? Employees are huge stakeholders in the company, so we need to be looking at the way staff are treated, the way that staff are trained and developed. We also need to look around the subject of Portafone's responsibility to the communities in which it trades. So where is it manufacturing, and how does that play into the community? Is it a great employer? Is it actually a polluter of the community? We don't really know what's going on there, and there's nothing in the pre-seen really that suggests that Portafone is a benefit to the community. Should it perhaps be engaging in community programs? Should it be sponsoring recycling programs? Should it be sponsoring NGOs that monitor the effects of mobile phone production, first of all, on the environment, but also the effects socially of the use of mobile phones? Now, if you think back to the pre-seen, there's space given in the pre-seen to a news article about how people are becoming addicted to their mobile phones and it's affecting their social interactions. And there's an opportunity there perhaps for Portafone to get involved in that story, be part of that discussion, sponsor research and show itself to be a responsible member of society. And this plays in, of course, to ethics. Now, ethics isn't just about the environment, it's about responsible business practices. And I think here, particularly in mobile phones, supplier auditing is very, very key, particularly around the subject of labour practices. And we know from our own news stories in the real world mobile phone business that some mobile phone manufacturers have been called to account over labour practices at their contract manufacturers in China and Taiwan. So we need to be looking at Portafone's suppliers. Where are they getting their components from, or who is assembling and manufacturing their phones for them? We don't know from the pre-seen whether they do it themselves or whether they outsource to one of these large companies like Foxconn, like Apple does. So we need to be looking at that. Now, before I go, I do want to remind you that Astranti Financial Training offers a range of materials beyond what you've seen here, including the study text, the full study text, the course videos, which actually drill down chapter by chapter and really get to the nub of things. The pre-seen analysis goes a little bit deeper into things, and the industry analysis gives you the real world context so that you become an expert in your case study industry. Mock exams are available along with marking and feedback from our tutors, and then there are masterclasses which are given by experts, all of which is covered by the Astranti Pass Guarantee. So I hope you'll take a moment to check those out, and I'll see you on the next one.